It's alright.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Yo guys, what is up? Max in our Borderlands 4 video, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive into every single node in Vex's skill tree. If you did not know, Vex is the new Siren character in Borderlands 4, who I got to play early during my time at 2K. While I did get to play Vex, we only had like 2.5 hours total to play Borderlands 4, so I didn't get to look at every single node in her passive trees, as the passive trees in Borderlands 4 are like almost triple the size of a skill tree in Borderlands 3. And so while we're gonna be going through everything, I'm also gonna be doing like a little bit of a first discovery / react to her skills. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So let's do her action skills first, and then we'll get into the skill tree. So Vex's first action skill is called Phase Familiar. Vex is joined by her minion Trouble. When killed, Trouble will respawn after a cooldown. Press F to teleport Trouble, dealing damage in an area. Trouble then transforms into a badass, fully restoring health and gaining increased damage for a duration. Activating Phase Familiar will respawn Trouble if currently dead. I didn't get to mess around with this one too much, but it did feel a bit like Flax Pets. If you ever did like a Gamma Burst Flak build, you could press this button and then Trouble would become much stronger for that duration. Her next action skill in the blue tree is Dead Ringer, which you spawn a phase clone minion. You get to choose Spectre or Reaper. So the way this works is you like click your action skill button, and then once your action skill pops up, there'll be a prompt. If you want to click like left, it's Spectre, or right, Reaper. I forget exactly the order. But these phase clones lose an ever increasing amount of health per second, and their damage type matches Vex's current attunement when spawned. You press left to spawn a Reaper that does melee attack damage and taunts enemies, and right to summon a Spectre that deals gun damage and cannot move. Vex's third action skill is called Incarnate, which is her green tree. Vex creates a phase explosion, dealing damage to nearby enemies and fully restoring her health. While active, Vex can use Eldritch Blast and gain increased movement speed. Eldritch Blast, you press your left bumper to fire an Eldritch Blast from her offhand, dealing damage to nearby enemies on impact. Dealing gun damage reduces Eldritch Blast cooldown, and if you press and hold LB to end Incarnate early, you partially refund its cooldown. This gives you 25% movement speed while it's up, and it's got a decent duration of 25 seconds. We saw this in some of the previous gameplay trailers that they shown off, kind of moving this orb around and causing explosions with it. Vex's Vault Hunter trait, or her like character passive, allows her to attune to the elemental type of her current gun, converting all action skill and melee damage into that type. Now, while I was there, I asked one of the developers if it was possible to attune to kinetic damage, and they did say that that was possible. So while this says like elemental type, you could technically make your like action skills kinetic damage, which is very interesting because Vex actually has a lot of synergies with kinetic damage as well as elemental damage. All right, let's do this. So starting in Vex's Here Comes Trouble, or red tree, we've got Grave Sustenance, kill skill, restore a percentage of your missing action skill duration. 4% per point. Enchantment, Vex gains a bonus kinetic damage with weapons while her action skill is active. Very cool. Means even if you're using an elemental weapon, you could still do kinetic damage. Blood is magic. Vex deals increased action skill damage the higher her health, so 6% per point. Hasty Fiends. Vex and her minions gain increased movement speed and damage reduction. Grave Command. Kill skill, restore a percentage of Trouble's command skill cooldown and respawn cooldown. And then we get to Vex's first augment, Violent Outburst. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to explode himself, dealing ordnance damage to all nearby enemies and restoring health to Vex. While Phase Familiar is active, sacrifice 33% of his maximum health capacity instead. Overprotective, kill skill, Vex and her minions gain overshield. Another augment, Blink Strike, command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to blink strike target enemies, dealing damage. Blink Strike always critically hits enemies below 50% HP. That's pretty cool. Yowl and Bay, Vex's minions gain increased maximum health capacity. Vex gains increased gun damage for a duration after commanding Trouble. Vorpal Fiends, Vex and her minions gain critical hit damage. While Vex has Overshield, she and her minions gain health regen. Vex and her minions gain increased melee damage and ordnance damage. Vex's kill skills gain increased effectiveness. This is pretty cool. I noticed Vex had a lot of like kill skills for the brief time that I got to look over to it. So this seems like it might be a very potent pickup. Then for the left tree, looks like it's going to be some ice stuff. Icy Attunement. Attune kill skill. While Vex is attuned to cryo, killing an enemy restores ammo and ordnance cooldown. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. Hexus Nexus augment. Trouble now taunts enemies, making them more likely to target him. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to charge target enemy, dealing melee damage in an area on impact and creating a singularity. Okay, so you can like pull in enemies with that. Blast Rights on ordnance activation. Vex gains overshield and increased fire rate for a duration. Corporeal. Vex and her minions gain increased maximum overshield capacity and overshield duration. While Vex has overshield, she and her minions gain increased damage dealt. Overshield seems to be a new mechanic here in Borderlands 4 that I'd be very curious to how, like, strong it is. Blasted Fiends. Vex gains increased ordnance damage. A percentage of Vex's ordnance damage increases minion damage. Oh, that's cool. I like that point. Overspirited kill skill. Killing an enemy with ordnance damage or an action skill will spawn an explosive remnant that deals cryo ordnance damage to nearby enemies. Explosive remnant gains increased damage based on overkill damage. Holy heck. That's like a cryo remnant orb from Amara. Doesn't look like it's as crazy because it gains increased damage from overkill bonus versus dealing overkill damage. So wouldn't be as crazy as Amara's remnant, but that's a very cool skill. We had Shiver. Vex gains increased cryo damage and cryo status effect damage. Interesting. Borderlands 3, cryo does not have a damage over time. It's the only element that doesn't deal dot damage. So I'd be curious what the status effect damage does. If cryo in Borderlands 4 is going to be a dot, that would be very cool. But yeah, interesting there. And then the capstone is Trouble Bubble. Trouble now gains overshield whenever he deals damage. While Phase Familiar is active, Trouble gains an elemental aura, dealing ordnance damage over time to nearby enemies. That is very cool. You can make Trouble a walking grenade or rocket launcher, dealing ordnance damage. Very, very cool. In the middle tree, we've got Elemental Essence. Vex gains increased elemental damage. Double this effect while an action skill is active. Vorpalfang. Trouble gains a chance to critically hit with all attacks. Press and hold to command Trouble to summon phase daggers overhead that fire at nearby enemies, dealing melee damage on impact. Interesting. Keen Fiends. Minion damage gains critical strike chance against any parts of enemies. That's cool. Whenever Vex or her minions critically hit, there's a chance to restore action skill cooldown. I like that a lot. Sacrificial Essence. Kill skill. Vex and her minions gain increased damage dealt, but Vex gains increased damage taken for a duration. Interesting. So you deal 1.5% increased damage, but take 3% increased damage. Stacks are lost when Vex dodges or enters fight for her life. Infernal Sum. Vex and her minions deal increased critical hit damage to enemies below 66.6% HP. Tail Whip. Trouble gains the ability to tail whip, dealing damage in an area over 2 hits. Cool capstone. Well, this is the real capstone. Double Trouble. Trouble now gains a chance to create an illusion near the enemy when dealing damage. Critical hits have double the chance. Illusions become badasses while Phase Familiar is active. That's very cool. And the illusions have a 50% damage multiplier for the 15% chance. So 30% chance if you crit. So you could potentially have a bunch of troubles out. I don't know if it said that there was a stack limit. Oh, okay. You can only have 3 at a time. 3 at a time. And then in our right side, we've got Shocking Attunement. Attune skill. When Vex is attuned to shock, Vex gains movement speed and gun damage while moving. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. Very cool. Beast mode. Command skill. Press and hold F to command Trouble to enter Beast mode, becoming immune to damage and gaining increased minion attack speed and movement speed for a duration. Kill skill extends Beast mode's duration. Nice. Grave Current. Kill skill. Vex's minions gain bonus shock damage. Minion bonus shock damage is plus 5% per stack, with the stack duration is 10 seconds. Max stacks of 3. Nice. That's a lot of bonus damage. Infusion. When Vex uses a rep kit are like the healing devices, the syringes. Vex and her minions gain bonus damage with weapons and melee damage for duration. Bonus damage elemental type is based on Vex's currently equipped weapon. Interesting. When you use your healing, you get more damage. Kill skill. Vex and her minions gain lifesteal. Oh, damn. It's only off of a kill, though. Lifesteal, you get lifesteal for yourself and minion lifesteal. That's probably very strong. When Vex deals gun damage, there's a chance to spawn a spark remnant that will seek out a nearby enemy and explode, dealing shock minion. The remnant does minion damage? What? That's crazy. Also, there's Vex has 2 remnant skills. You could have cryo remnants and shock remnants. I think the shock remnants did gun damage. I'd have to double check. But the remnants dealing melee damage off of your or minion damage off of your gun attacks. Sounds like there could be some pretty busted things going on with that. That sounds very cool. Stormblast, Vex gains increased shock damage and shock status effect damage. Nice. Bunch of shock stuff. And then Unsealed. Trouble will now mark his current target, causing them to take increased gun damage from Vex. Kill skill. When a marked enemy is killed, Trouble gains a stack of Unsealed for a duration, granting health regen and increased damage, while Face Familiar is active. Unsealed effects are doubled. So you get 50% increased damage against marked targets. That sounds good for bossing. And it gets health regeneration and damage dealt, and it stacks. Up to 30% increased damage dealt for Trouble. Very cool. Now for Vex Escalation or Vex's Green Tree, we're starting with Guns and Needles, Kill Skill, Restore Rep Kit cooldown by a percentage. Ooh, that's actually pretty nice. Rep Kits seemed pretty important for surviving, at least early on. It looks like Vex is going to have some sources of lifesteal, so maybe she's not going to really rely on them as much as other characters will be, but that's a pretty nice skill. Volatile Essence, Vex gains increased splash damage. Double this effect when an action skill is active. Awesome. Leeching Attunement. When Vex is attuned to kinetic, she gains increased lifesteal and reload speed. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. Increased lifesteal or lifesteal? If that's 2% lifesteal per point, that's broken at like literally level 5, level 6. You'd just be lifestealing. But it seems like it's increased lifesteal. So maybe you need lifesteal from another source. But that potentially is really, really, really strong. Very cool. Grave Sights. Kill skill. Vex gains increased critical hit damage and weapon handling. Nice. Fiendish Invigoration. When Vex uses a rep kit, she and her minions gain increased movement speed and fire rate for a duration. Our first augment, instead of causing a phase explosion, Vex launches a Geist Wave, dealing ordnance damage to enemies it passes through. Nice. Okay. I didn't get to see this while I was at 2K, but we did see this in the trailer. That was kind of like that wing screech that she did that hit a bunch of enemies. Nice. Very cool. Bloodletter. Oh, I did read this in my time playing. This is actually one of the skills that I single-handedly am the most excited for. Gun and skill critical hits have a chance to apply bleed, causing kinetic status effect damage over time. Bleed is affected by status effect application chance and is considered a status effect. I've been waiting for Bleed to be back for a while. We had it in the pre-sequel. Very, very excited for Kinetic Bleed, both on gun and skill critical hits. And it looks like you can spend a bunch of points into this to get a bunch of your damage per second from your guns as Bleed, which is awesome. This could be really, really, really powerful. The next augment is Energy Vampire. Vex deals status effect damage to nearby enemies over time and gains overshield for each enemy affected. Each enemy affected by status effects. Damn. Killing an enemy while Incarnate is active will grant a stack of Energy Vampire, increasing status effect damage. Stacks are lost when Incarnate ends. Nice. Grave Implements. Kill skill. Vex and her minions gain increased gun damage for a duration. Channeling. Vex gains increased action skill duration and attunement duration. Material Components. Vex gains increased kinetic damage and kinetic status effect damage. So this is basically just more bleed damage, which is awesome. Grave Power. Vex kill skills gain increased max stacks. Dang! +1 kill skill max stacks, and you can get to +3? Oh, I think you have to spec into this for literally every single one of her builds. That is nuts. Wait, that changes everything. Because, like, a lot of her kill skills are, like, stacks up to 30% damage. And this would now make that 60% damage. Holy crap. Yeah, that's actually one of the that's one of the craziest skills we've looked at in both of these videos. Vex's gun damage gains a critical hit chance against any part of enemies. Also very cool. On this left side, Radiant Attunement. Attune skill. While Vex is attuned to radiation, she gains increased splash damage and maximum shield capacity. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. So she gets extra splash damage and maximum shield capacity. Cool. We like that. Splash synergizes pretty well with radiation. Iron Maiden. Phase Explosion and Eldritch Blast restore shield for each enemy hit and deal increased damage based on Vex's current shield. Interesting. Vex gains increased gun damage. The more full her shield and damage reduction, the less full her health. Nice. Okay, all right. This is leaning more into like a big shield build, I guess. When Vex deals gun damage, there's a chance to spawn a radioactive hazard, dealing radiation damage over time. When Vex uses a rep kit, she gains shield regen for a duration. Full Moon, Vex gains action skill cooldown rate and ordnance cooldown rate based on the fullness of her shield. Action skill cooldown rate and ordnance cooldown rate, nice. Havoc, Vex gains increased radiation damage and radiation status effect damage. Cool. She seems to have a lot of specialties and elements in these trees, where like one tree was cryo, one tree was radiation. We've got a shock tree now that has this kind of like big bonus at the end where you get a bunch of extra elemental damage. I am surprised that Vex has so much elemental damage things, to be honest, because even though she's the Siren, it looked like Harlow was going to be the main elemental character. So I'm very curious to see what Harlow's like elemental bonuses and stuff like that looks like, because she is like the Malawan trooper. And then Vex's capstone here is Desecration. Phase Explosion and Eldritch Blast create hazards, dealing damage over time for a duration. Eldritch Blast is now homing. If it hits an airborne enemy, it bursts after delay, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Nice. So you're going to have like radiation pools and radiation explosions, and then also explosions and hazards from your like your phase explosions. Lots of explosions. All right, middle tree, Drink Full. Whenever Vex deals gun damage, gain a stack of Drink Full, increasing fire rate. Stacks of Drink Full are lost if a new stack has not been gained for a duration. That's pretty cool. Witchy Trigger Finger. Dealing damage with Eldritch Blast or Phase Explosion will reload Vex's current gun and grant a stack of Witchy Trigger Finger, increasing gun damage for a duration. Stacks of Witchy Trigger Finger persist even after Incarnate ends. Ooh, okay. So this is leaning a lot more into gun damage. She's going to get lots of gun damage, lots of fire rate from this. That's a very powerful augment. Vex's skill damage gains critical hit chance against any part of enemies. Nice. Vex gains increased magazine size and weapon swip speed. Double this effect when an action skill is active. Yeah, more gun stuff. Chance to trigger kill skills when critically hitting enemies. Oh, man. Okay. Vex has got like some Zane kill skill-esque things going on. But with the node to double, like triple stack your kill skills plus trigger them without killing anything, that's obviously like super potent for bossing when you're probably not going to be getting any kills. Grave Elements, kill skill, Vex and her minions gain elemental damage for a duration. Vibe Check is her capstone. Eldritch Blast is now a charge skill. Activating Eldritch Blast consumes all charges to ricochet on hitting an enemy for each charge consumed. Eldritch Blast cooldown reduction from gun damage is doubled. Oh, so you're going to get it up way more often from guns. Nice. And then we've got Strike Me Down. Whenever Vex would enter fight for her life, she immediately gets a second wind, becomes invincible for a duration, and causes a phase explosion. Nice. Then for our rightmost tree, we've got Grave Vitality. Kill skill of Vex gains increased maximum health capacity and health regen. Grave Harvest. Kill skill, killing an enemy while Incarnate is active will spawn a Soul Orb that deals status effect damage over time to nearby enemies for a duration. Detonate a Soul Orb at range by pressing E, dealing ordnance damage to nearby enemies. Picking up a Soul Orb will restore health and action skill duration. That's pretty cool. Ars Arcana. Vex gains increased skill damage. Nice, I like that point. A Deeper Grave. Vex's kill skills gain increased duration. Bloodshot. When Vex uses a repair kit, her next gunshot will become a Bloodshot, converting her damage dealt into kinetic damage and dealing bonus damage based on her current health. Interesting. That looks like a one-shot skill to me. You pop the rev kit, get a bunch of extra damage, fire like a rocket launcher. Could be very, very cool. If that procs like a big bleed off of it, that would be kind of insane. Vex gains lifesteal. Double this effect while an action skill is active. Lifesteal plus 2%. So far, this green tree seems nuts to me. I like this green tree a lot more than I like the red tree. Heart Piercer. Eldritch Blast now sacrifices health on use, but becomes a piercing wave. Enemies hit take damage, and allies hit restore health. Gains bonus damage on healing based on sacrificed health. Eldritch Blast no longer has a cooldown? Wait, what? So you could, as long as you've got all this lifesteal, you could just keep Eldritch Blasting? Yeah. This guy I would spec into the green tree. Green tree seems good on Vex. Vex gains bonus kinetic damage with guns based on lifesteal when her health is full. Your bonus damage is 100% of your lifesteal. Oh my lord! Wait, and it stacks up to 300%. What was the other thing? I'd have to check how much lifesteal it was, but 300% bonus of your lifesteal. I mean, if you could get a decent amount of lifesteal, that would be very, very potent. Okay, moving on to her next tree. All right, now let's get into her blue tree. The fourth seal. This is the tree with the like specters and the reapers. I did get to play this tree a fair bit, and it felt very good to me. Not only was the like AI of the minions pretty good, but the enemies spent a considerable amount of time targeting them as well. So like I felt pretty survivable when I was playing this because enemies were just not focusing me as often, and the AI of my like minions seemed pretty solid from like the brief time I got to play it. But let's go through this tree. So we've got Sanguine Fiends. Vex and her minions regenerate health over time. Nice. Idle Hands. Vex and her minions gain reload speed based on the fullness of her health. Cold Iron. Vex and her minions gain increased gun damage. And Fell Inscriptions. Vex and her minions gain increased melee damage and maximum health capacity. Okay, pretty standard first row. Grave Assault. Vex and her minions gain increased fire rate for a duration. That's a kill skill. First augment is Gas Blaster. Minion skill, Spectres gain the ability to use Gas Blast, dealing gun damage to all nearby enemies on impact. Spectres will use Gas Blast on spawn and after they reload. Ooh, that's interesting. I wonder if you could get like a, you know, like a Jacob shotgun, basically, you know, like one pump or something that they'd have to reload very, very often and just spam out all these gas blasts. That could be a very interesting build. Portents of Suffering. Vex and her minions gain increased status effect damage. Coven. This is another augment. Spawning a Reaper grants Vex and her minions health regen for a duration. Spawning a Spectre grants Vex and her minions critical hit chance for a duration. Nice. Up to 30% crit chance. That's pretty cool. Cursed Blade. Vex's melee attacks apply curse to hit enemies, making them take kinetic status effect damage anytime they take gun damage. There's definitely some interesting things that you could do with that, with the bleed node as well. They take kinetic status effect damage anytime they take gun damage. That with the bleed node, with like, I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to make, I'd have to double check, if there's a way to make melee damage happen from afar. Could be really interesting. Even like a face puncher into something like that could be kind of crazy. Blood Sacrifice. Kill skills are triggered whenever Vex's minions die. Oh, that's neat. That's cool. I bet you could do some sort of like sacrifice build where you're just constantly killing them as well, spawning all your kill skills. Grave Fiends. Kill skill. Vex and her minions deal increased damage. Grave Quickening. Kill skill. Vex gains increased action skill cooldown rate. She's so kill skill focused. Extra Cursed. Curse damage now triggers on minion melee damage. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you didn't even need to use your own melee. You just summon your own minions. Minion melee damage and deal increased damage when it's triggered by a critical hit. Curse damage on critical hit plus 200%. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay. On the left side, we've got Blade Attunement. While Vex is attuned to corrosive, killing an enemy creates a haunting remnant minion for a duration that seeks out nearby enemies, dealing corrosive status effect damage over time. Nice. So she could just have a bunch of these corrosive remnants out. Wither. Minion skill. Spectres cast Wither on an enemy whenever they spawn, dealing status effect damage over time and increasing damage taken for a duration. Kill skill. Killing a withered enemy allows Spectres to use Wither again. Nice. It's a 30% damage taken increase. Prismatic Ichor. When Vex and her minions apply a status effect, apply another random elemental status effect. That's broken. You could use kinetic weapons. Shoot your kinetic weapons, which would proc a bleed, which is considered a status effect. And by using kinetic weapons, you could also get elemental weapons or elemental status effects with this. Yeah, I like where that's going. That looks really good. Keen Suffering. Status effect damage gains a chance to critically hit. Oh, I could see like a crazy green-blue tree going like status effects and like cursed blades and stuff. Whenever Vex dodges, she creates a Spectre nearby and becomes invisible for a duration on her next gunshot. Vex can just go invisible. Okay. Very cool. It's not even an action skill. When Vex swaps her current gun, her new gun has its ammo partially restored. That's kind of a weak skill to be this deep, I'm going to be honest with you. Vex gains increased corrosive damage, corrosive status effect, same thing we've seen in the other trees. And then her capstone is Heirloom. Spectres gain a copy of Vex's currently equipped gun for a duration. Only one Spectre can have a copied gun at a time, and spawning a new Spectre will remove the copied gun from the previous Spectre. Copied gun damage multiplier is minus 25%. Okay, so not like insane, Like, obviously, giving one of your Spectres your gun is going to be crazy, but it's not like you can have 3 Spectres with 3 of them all using, like, Plague Bearers or, like, the Root or something ridiculous. You know what I mean? Still very cool. Okay, that's on the left side. In the middle, we've got Burning Attunement. Attune skill. While Vex is attuned to Incendiary, Vex and her minions gain critical hit damage and status effect application chance. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. Hellish Harvest. Minion skill. Reapers gain the ability to use Hellish Harvest, dealing melee damage 3 times in a large area around themselves, and they regenerate health for each enemy hit. Reapers will use Hellish Harvest on spawn and every 3rd time they melee attack. That seems pretty cool. And they regenerate a bunch of health for you. Reoccurrence. Whenever Vex deals gun damage or melee damage, gain a stack of reoccurrence, which increases her minions' gun damage and melee damage. Stacks of reoccurrence are lost if a new stack has not been gained for a duration. Very cool. Reverberations. Melee damage dealt by Vex and her minions have a chance to deal incendiary damage. That's cool. Oh, and it's based off of initial damage dealt, and you can put more points into this to make it... You could do, like, more than your initial damage. That's cool. Haru specs. Melee override. Vex now throws a phase dagger from her offhand that deals melee damage to enemies. Hit. Phase daggers can critically hit. Kill skill. Phase daggers cooldown is reset. Nice. Burnt offering. Vex gains incendiary damage and incendiary status effect. So she's got one of these for, like, basically every element. Grim Reaper. Press and hold to spawn a Grim Reaper that drains nearby enemies, dealing status effect damage over time and restoring health for each drained enemy. When an enemy dies while being drained, there's a chance a new Reaper will be spawned. Oh, I bet you that looks really cool. Just spawning a bunch of Grim Reapers. I don't know how good that's going to be, but like the badass factor of that's very cool. Haru specs now throws 5 phase daggers from both hands in a fan pattern. Killing an enemy now only refunds 33% of phase daggers cooldown. Interesting. But you can spam a bunch of phase daggers out. Those phase daggers do melee damage, so I bet you they would also apply curse. Remember we were like I wonder if you could apply melee from ranged. I bet you these phase daggers that you throw could proc these cursed blades on enemies, which would be pretty massive. Prismatic weaponry. Vex and her Spectres deal bonus damage with gun critical hits. Bonus damage is a random elemental type that changes on reload and is increased for each active attunement. Bonus damage with gun critical hits. So you just deal more damage when you're critting with your guns. That's awesome. Okay. Banshee's Wail. Minion skill. Reapers can now use Banshee's Wail periodically, dealing damage to nearby enemies and granting overshield to nearby allies. Damage increases applied to overshield granted to allies. Damaged enemies deal reduced damage for a duration. Okay, seems kind of like a support skill. Vex gains increased minion damage. Minion skills and command skills gain further increased damage. Okay, so far this tree seems like more focused on her minions than her and her like allies. Whenever Vex takes damage while at low health, spawn a Reaper nearby with a 120-second cooldown at base. Vex gains a stack of Ancient Rites for each of her active minions every second, increasing minion damage. Stacks are lost after duration with no active minion. Reapers gain maximum health capacity and will release a Spirit Bomb Remnant when they die, dealing damage of their elemental type to nearby enemies. God damn. That sounds pretty cool. Diner, Dead Ringer gains an additional charge. Dang, okay. That's very, very cool. And then Dark Pact. Vex can equip... Oh, whoa. Vex can equip 2 augments and gains the ability to use Dark Pact. Dark Pact, press and hold F to fully restore all of your active phase clones, as well as granting increased movement speed and minion attack speed for a duration. Phase clones do not lose health over time while Dark Pact is active, and health losses reset when Dark Pact ends. Interesting. So you basically, yeah. Okay, so you get to use this capstone, it sounds like, and you get to use 2 augments. So this is like full sending it into your like minions, and then you could press this button and get all of your minions up, and they're going to have a massive attack speed multiplier and movement speed multiplier, and you get 2 augments. So you get to pick from 2 power-ups for your minions. That sounds very, very cool. I like that a lot. Guys, that's going to do it for Vex's skill tree breakdown. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to be honest, I was very excited for Vex, and then I saw that she had like all of these minions and summons, and going to be honest, I'm just not a minion player. Like, it's in any of the ARPGs that I play or looter shooters, I just never gravitate towards minion builds because personally, they don't typically feel very good to me because, I like dealing the damage. I don't like watching other things do the damage for me. But after going through Vex's skill tree, her skill tree looks really fun. There's so many cool things going on. I still have not decided my starting character. I'm probably between Vex and Harlow. I got to see Harlow's tree to make a decision on it. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what character you plan on starting and what thing in Vex's skill tree excites you the most. Maybe a synergy or a build thing that stuck out to you that maybe I didn't catch. But yeah, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.